Guns. Let's talk about it. What's up, Spicy Taco fam? So today, we are gonna talk a little bit about something that's like been in the news lately for a long time, for a while now, and it's been brought up again. As you guys have probably already heard, I'm sure you have. There was two mass shootings this weekends ago, and then a couple more before that at the Garlic Festival in California, and I think in Brooklyn, New York. But these most recent ones were in Texas and Ohio. Just to give you a little update in case you haven't heard for some reason. In Texas, in the late morning of August 4th, a man arrived at a busy Walmart in El Paso, Texas, and commenced shooting at shoppers, killing 20 and injuring 26. His rampage ended at a little before 3 p.m. when officers declared the threat was over. Before arriving on the site, the gunman posted a racist manifesto on this website called 8chan. Literally less than 24 hours later in Ohio, Dayton, Ohio to be specific, around 3 or 4 in the morning, another shooter or guy started shooting at a busy nightlife street. And then as little as 32 seconds, he killed 10 and then injured 27 people. One of those killed was his actual sister. So just to start this off, I wanted to see what you guys, what was your guys' upbringing during?
Before we get to that, I do want to say, that's what blew my mind, is that it took the police officers did a great job in Ohio, and they did a great job at El Paso as well, but 32 seconds.
Yeah.
32 seconds. What can you do in 32 seconds?
Mm-hmm.
You know? They stopped this man, and he still managed to kill 10 people and injure 27. That just shows the power of a gun, you know? So I just wanted to make that statement, but I guess our upbringing was more, there wasn't any strict regulation for us for guns. My dad never had a gun or whatever. My uncles did. So when I was in Mexico, they would like to hunt. So I was around that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was never there was really no opinion. At least not for me. I don't know if it was different for you.
I mean, I had seen guns when I was young, but I'd never shot one. I don't think I've ever shot a gun. So I haven't had too many experiences with them in my own hands, but I more recently have seen some of my peers with their own. They post them on social media. They wear it like it's fashion, and it's what's in. You don't have a gun, you're out of the loop. So.
Well, for me personally, growing up, my parents, specifically my dad, was really anti-gun. Anytime we would go to the store or whatever and we wanted a toy, it could not be a plastic gun. We couldn't get even those little. There was this one I really wanted one time. It was a electronic one where it would shoot out discs.
Mm-hmm.
You put the disc and it would go.
I had one.
Yeah,
my
dad was like, "No, put that back." Yeah, you can't. So we were very anti-gun.
Wow. So actually, now that you mentioned it, I hadn't thought about that. But even the pointing with the finger, my mom would get really mad.
Mm-hmm.
She'd be like, "You don't do that. Don't ever do that."
Yeah.
If you had a gun for real, whatever, don't ever point it at anyone. But I have, touching on what you were saying, I have shot a gun before. I've been to a shooting range before, so it's not like I've shot guns before. But we'll get into our opinions on that. But I just wanted to insert that.
But so we do actually have 3 arguments we wanted to touch base on that kind of came out. One of them specifically came out right after the shooting in Texas, which we'll start off with.
So I'm gonna be discussing the role of video games. So first, I would like to say a quote by the Lieutenant Governor of Texas after the shooting in El Paso, Texas. Dan Patrick says, "We've always had guns, always had evil. But I see a video game industry that teaches young people to kill." So I don't know what you guys' opinion, what you guys' thoughts are on that. You guys actually think the video games play a role?
The argument is that video games are causing mass shootings.
So what I've noticed so far, especially after these mass shootings, a lot of politicians are saying oh, we need to look at video games. You know, violent video games is causing these young people to do that. Even when doing my research, I found, there was an article on Fox News that says the problem isn't the gun is an inanimate object. The problem is the person who pulls the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you guys feel about that?
I mean, me personally, I feel like it's just a way to get people's attention off the actual issue, which will, I mean, we know what that is. But yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous to blame video games.
Mm-hmm.
They're just trying to find something else to blame besides a gun or whatever.
I don't know. I feel like, because I play video games, I love to play Call of Duty, first-person shooters and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never had the thought of like, oh, I'm gonna go murder somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm gonna go to war because, you know, I love doing war in video games.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another point that I thought about. Like, there's been wars, the World War I, World War II, the worst wars in the world, and there wasn't video games around then. Like, how did the world get so violent then? You know, so I don't know. But all the evidence points to the violent video games aren't causing a rise in mass shootings. There's large analysis of violent crime and violent video games. Use find no evidence that increased sales of violent video games leads to a spike in violent crimes. Researchers make the case that if violent games directly led to violent behavior, the data will show increases in violent crime on a large scale as more people play violent video games. In fact, and this is interesting, there is some evidence that as more youth play video games, rates of youth violence have decreased.
They're taking their anger out on the game.
So that's what
whatever you stress or anything that they're experiencing, they're just going on the game.
So I don't know. I just feel like millions of people around the world play video games. You know, we're not the only ones.
Now, the thing I've heard is that like Japan plays
like Korea.
So many games.
Koreans are one of the like especially now with esports.
You don't hear anything.
They're like the top of like esports competition. Like they're beasts, and they're not out here causing mass shootings. And with games like Fortnite, Call of Duty, I'm trying to think other top games. Other top games that they compete in and stuff. They're not out here shooting people. They're not more dangerous than you or I. I don't know who they are. They might be aggressive people or whatever, but they're not causing mass shootings. You don't see the same rate of mass shootings in Korea, South Korea, or in Japan, or in England, or any of these places where they sell violent video games. And people are playing them, as you see here in the United States. So I feel like there has to be something else. Like there must be some other reason.
Of course.
Now, James Ivory, professor at Virginia Tech, is where I got most of my points about basically that there's no clear evidence that says that. He made a statement which I hate to agree with, but he says the public doesn't always blame crime on video games, but they are 8 times more likely to do so when the perpetrator of a crime is white.
Yeah, I mean, that's no secret.
It just feels like whenever it's a white shooter, they have some other, he must have something, there must be something else. It could be video games. They just can't believe that this man would go into a church and shoot up all these people. To go into a Walmart and shoot up all these people. Has to be something else. Go into a school. One thing I've heard is that maybe it's mental illness.
Yeah. And actually, there's an argument for that on both sides of the spectrum. People blame it on mental illness, and actually, I think the first recorded, or I don't know, I'm sure that there was mass shootings before this time, but since the 1920s, there's been like mass shootings happening that are recorded anyway. Like the ones that I saw were
calculated
the 1920s up until now. And it wasn't until about the 1960s that they had, like, psychiatrists would actually put out documents that would support the idea that mental illness, or they would put people who were mentally ill in these subgroups that said that they were more likely to, like, pull off a shooting or plan a mass shooting like that, you know? And there's psychiatrists, like, even now, that say that people who have schizophrenia or people who suffer with any kind of severe mental disorder are more likely to commit a crime like that, you know, more heinous and just in a broader scale. But there's never any actual, I guess, evidence to that. But one thing that they do say is that we have to try to find a way to make it so that people who are mentally ill don't get guns. And places like New York have done something like that, where they made an act where if you're mentally ill, the law enforcement, after you're released from any kind of like mental institution, they can retrieve your guns, take your guns from you, and they can take your gun license. So if you have a gun license, they take it from you if you have any kind of mental disorder.
That's good. I think.
And yeah, I mean, but other than that, the argument really is just if you aren't mentally stable, or if you are considered to not be mentally stable, then you are more likely to carry out an attack like that. And on the other side, the argument against that says that, you know, it's not mental illness. Mental illness is not to be blamed for mass shootings and stuff. It's just kind of what we touched on earlier, which was like, it's just a cover up. It's just a way to not have the conversation that needs to be had.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way about with video games. It's like, or any other argument that's not gun control or having any kind of laws against guns or certain things like that. It's just, yeah, I mean, that's what it is. And I mean, I think I had a point here that I wanted to make. Okay. Well, yeah, I'll mention this here that says that mental health rates are roughly the same. Mental health rates are roughly the same around the world, yet other countries don't experience as many mass shootings because they don't have the same kind of weapons that we do, and they don't have the same access and stuff like that. And also another thing that I found interesting is that when you talk about mental illness since like the 80s or the 70s, if you know what the DSM-5 is, like the guidebook of mental disorders, it just has a list. It's broadening. You know, some things get taken out, but more things get put in. So it's like how, I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is like, how can you know where someone's mind is and if they're ill when they're carrying out these attacks?
That's what I wanted to touch on. Just like you said, I think mental illness is also like an excuse. Not to say that mental illness isn't a problem. We definitely need to spend more resources studying that, but that's the problem.
Yeah.
There is so much unknown about a person's mind, about our own.
In general,
that's like the thing that we know the least. Like if you're your brain, and you're trying to understand. The brain's trying to understand itself, basically. So we've been able to classify like schizophrenia, psychopath, stuff like that. So there's things that you can be like, okay, well, this guy has a mental illness, right? But it's like you said, you can't, like, if you go to a psychiatrist right now, they're going to find something with you. Oh, you're a narcissist. Oh, you're this. Oh, you're that.
Of course.
And it's a way to label it. Does that mean that you're mentally ill, that you're going to commit some
kind of... There's no way to, like, I guess the problem is they don't really know how to measure it.
This is that we don't know. That's the thing, that we're afraid to say that we don't know.
Yeah.
And like you said, I feel like the focus should actually be on, because what's causing is not just the mental illness. They have this weapon. And I've always had the argument that's like, you could use it with anything, all these car crashes or whatever. But like, we have all these screenings, all these things you have to do to get a driver's license. And we have all these laws that if you break any of them, you could lose your driver's license. You know, this guy, if he gets out of jail, the El Paso, Texas shooter, he could go to a gun show and buy another gun.
Yeah.
So why not limit the access to the guns? I'm not saying like ban every gun in the world, you know, because
my thing is, sure, limitations, everything. I think one of the main problems is, even how you mentioned that, like back in the 1920s and all those shootings have happened. Sure, there's been shootings since guns were invented. But the problem is, I think now is that like we have modern guns that are assault rifles.
That's the big
why does a civilian in a suburban neighborhood need a AK-47 to hunt? You're gonna hunt something with an AK-47? If you are, I feel like you're just like,
you're gonna hunt something.
What's that called?
Person.
You're like
people
trigger. I don't
know.
Yeah.
Like I get the idea, and I think I'm gonna sound like the people with the video games and stuff, but I feel like there is a glorification of having these assault rifles. Like you see the movies where like you have that panel full of guns, and you want to have your assault rifle, you want to have an AK, you want to have an M16 or whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just Like, I don't have a problem with people having guns. I don't care.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, whatever. You want to have your pistol, you have a rifle to go hunting, great. You like to go hunting, great. Like you said, though, there are certain guns that should not be.
Like the ones that are just like shooting 50 rounds per. I don't know how many seconds. I'm not a gun guy, so I don't really know. But like, why?
Like, if you want that, go to a shooting range.
Right. So like, why not like say go to a shooting range, and even if it's a very sophisticated shooting range where it's like fenced in and you can go hunting or whatever you want in that area.
Yeah.
But then when you leave it, okay, we need all your ammo. You can keep your gun, but we need all your ammo. I don't think.
Well, I wouldn't even go as far as saying you don't have access to the guns at all. You have to go to the shooting range where you have people that are trained, whether it's ex-military personnel, whatever, that use these guns on a daily, and that's the only place you can use the gun. You know, don't even take the gun out of there because I don't know. That's my opinion. I might be too radical, but
I'm just like, I guess my thing is I'm against assault rifles.
Yes,
anything.
That's what I'm saying.
Because like back then, like you said, 1920 thing. Sure, I'm gonna take my musket and then I'm gonna shoot you once. And I'm gonna be there for 30 seconds,
and I might not even hit you.
And yeah,
like
so it's like that's why there's been, all they say it's been an increase. It's because of assault rifles.
But I feel like the whole blaming mental illness. Like once again,
it's part of the issue.
We should definitely focus on mental illness, but we should. What was it? The shooting? I think it was in Australia, maybe New Zealand, earlier in the year, where like the prime minister was like, "Okay, yeah, we're gonna do a ban on guns." I don't know if they banned every gun, but they did a ban and they bought them back from the people. Like, we're gonna buy these back because you can't have these. But that's their leadership taking
control.
Yeah, and being like, "Listen, we don't want this to happen again. We're not gonna ban video games. We're not gonna try to go screen everyone to see if they're mentally ill. We're just going to take the thing that enabled this, But what if it was a good guy that had a gun?
So here's this argument. The good carriers versus the gunners or whatever.
The bad people.
So this kind of argument kind of gained more traction after the Sandy Hook shooting with the kids. And so basically what it is like, why not give teachers guns? Or what if like there's a shooting happening and that person who's a good carrier, will stop the shooter from continuing to kill. The argument goes like this, basically. That's the argument. So my personal opinion is if this the shooter back in Ohio killed 10 people within 32 seconds, how is someone going to react to stop that person? Even after they stopped him, thankfully they stopped him, 10 people still fell to the floor, plus other people who were injured. It's just not.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. Why fight fire with fire?
That was mind blowing to me. And I'm sorry to cut you off, but 32 seconds. 32 seconds.
Plus, it's like, say, these two people or whatever are in a shootout trying to stop each other. But what's the law enforcement gets there? Who's he gonna know that's the law person? Who's gonna know who's the good guy, who's the bad guy?
Shooting.
If I'm trying to run away from the gunner and I see someone shooting, I'm gonna run. Like, how do I just won't know the difference.
Yeah.
Everyone's shooting at each other.
That's why we have uniforms. Law enforcement.
Yeah. You can distinguish.
Wow.
I mean, I feel you, because like I said earlier, if you want to have a gun, if you want to keep a gun in your house for safety, I'm not gonna tell you not to. My personal rules is I just won't have one in the house. But can you distinguish, like you said, the uniforms from an officer or whatever? Okay, this person has or is licensed to have it. They've been trained, blah blah blah. But a regular person that you see walking down the street, that could be a bad guy. That could be a good guy. You don't know him. What if I was walking down the street with a gun? You don't know me. I consider myself a good guy. The person that shot all the people in El Paso, he considers himself a good guy. The Dylan Roof who walked into church and killed all those people while they were praying, he thought he was a good guy.
Exactly.
He's a good guy with a gun. But what did he do with it? We consider them a bad guy because you just killed innocent people. But in your eyes, you're going to see yourself as good, and you have a weapon, and you're going to do whatever it is that your objective is. And once again, I'm going to stick to that point. 32 seconds.
Yeah. 32 seconds. And what's crazy about like going back into mental illness is when you blame people who are mentally ill, you're not saying what kind of mental illness and stuff like that. You're just furthering the like stigma that's attached to people with mental illness, further driving them into the shadows. They're not gonna get the help that they need, and it's like
they're gonna be viewed as dangerous.
Exactly. And the same thing with people who play video games. Say it's like, I don't want my son playing video games. I don't want there to be video games sold at Walmart that are like shooting games or whatever. And it's just you're looking at everything except the one thing that is proven to be in every single picture that you try to paint. It's right there.
There's one thing that they'll have.
Yeah, it's always there.
Like if you ban all violent video games, you still have the gun. If you start focusing on people with mental illness, you still have a gun. And the focus on that mental illness is like a lot of people want to say like they have to be mentally ill, right?
Yeah,
they have to be mentally ill, and it's like humans are some of the most vile, evil people in history. You know, we don't keep history of other creatures, or other species. But I'm just saying, like, you look at history. I'm not saying that those people weren't, that all those people were mentally stable, but it's easy. I understand why you want to say there must be something wrong with their head, because you would never do something like that.
Yeah.
But you know what's more terrifying? Wow. Knowing that person might actually be mentally stable.
Well,
and still did the crime.
I'm pretty sure
people don't want to accept that. That's what I'm saying. People don't want to accept that. Whether it's because it's a white guy that did it, it can't be a white guy because white people are perfect. Whether it's a black guy, it doesn't matter. Like you said, blaming mental illness is just making things worse for people with actual mental disabilities, because you don't see schizophrenics shooting schools. You know, these are people that we know that are being watched. You know, you've seen them in schools that need extra attention. Yeah. And you don't see them coming into the school with a gun about to kill everybody. So I think that's also a problem. Like, I get the message. We need to check. And I do feel like there should be more work done in that field, mental illness. But we can't just keep saying all these other things.
Yeah. And I feel like these things do play a role. I mean, were they the majority of the people who have shot up Walmarts and churches and stuff, mass shooters? I'm sure that some of them were mentally ill. I'm sure that some of them were influenced by a video game. I'm sure that there's something in there, but the percentage of
it's like
the amount,
main cause.
It's like sprinkling like 2 grains of salt.
I believe it's on the Washington Post. I think the Washington Post. You can go into the website, and they actually have a catalog of all the mass shooters that they have recorded for, I don't know, since like the 1900s. And they categorize like different things that could have been the reason or whatever, or how many people were killed and stuff like that. And it's just an interesting thing to look at because, you know, like once again, they didn't have video games back then. So like, why were these people committing these mass shootings? Yeah. So there's like a trend, and the trend has shown that the only thing that's changed is that there's more access to the like assault rifles, like you said.
Just the other day, we were driving back from Florida, through Florida Panhandle, Alabama, and then back into Georgia. I saw at least 3 or 4 different gun shops just off the road in the middle of nowhere. Middle of nowhere. They were just there, like guns, guns, guns. Like there's no city anywhere near there. Why is there a gun store in the middle?
That's sketchy as fuck.
Like, you see them. I mean, and like even the pawn shop here where we live in. You can go. I've seen people buy guns there. All they ask for is like your driver's license, if anything. They don't ask you for anything. They don't ask you. There's no check. They don't ask you if you've been trained. There's no like, oh, let me see your training certification or whatever. Oh, you want this one? Cool.
You know what's crazy? Going back to a video that we filmed in the past. Remember that story you told us about the time that the guy pulled a gun on you, like when you were driving or whatever? It's like things like that. They shouldn't happen. Should not happen. People shouldn't have access to guns that easy, because you get people like that who just because you're in a car and you're going through some road rage, you decide to pull your gun out and point it at someone next to you, and it's like, that should never be a thing, you know?
Or even just that, besides that, like kids who accidentally get access to the guns, and then they just like sometimes they kill themselves, kill their brother, something. Anything can happen with kids in the house or whatever, because people are not gonna like always be watching what they have at home or whatever. They might think it's in a safe, secure area, but the wrong person might get to it. I don't know.
And that's our opinion there. Like I said, I don't have a problem with people owning guns. I don't know how you guys feel about that. I understand. I think like you might disagree, but I think that banning all guns is just creating a bigger problem because there are actual people, and I have a problem with hunting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, especially like endangered animals, like the poachers in Africa, all over Africa and stuff like that. But I know that there's people that like to go to the shooting range. You have your ex-military that like to have their gun on their side or whatever. You have people that do enjoy hunting. So I'm fine with it. But I feel like we definitely need to just actually have the conversation of what guns are necessary, what guns are for what, and regulate it.
You know, one of the bigger arguments too that I've seen, and I don't know how much this is an argument more than it is like fear. It's just what people run to immediately is if you strip guns, especially guns like assault rifles, right? Mm-hmm. Because you know we have a militarized police force now, mm-hmm. and it's obvious and it's evident why we need it because we have a militarized people, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's like if you threaten to take away assault rifles and any kind of gun, period, right, that people will no longer have access to, if you try to strengthen the background checks or anything, like make it harder for people to obtain those guns and get the licenses and stuff,
that the black market will grow.
Well, not just that, but I feel like people feel or fear that like eventually it'll make it easier for the government, right, to swoop in and set what's called martial law, where they'll take over, they'll strip all your guns, and then eventually we won't have a way to protect ourselves and like overthrow a government that's like tyrannical or whatever. It becomes too strong, and the people will be pushed back and will be almost
defenseless.
Defenseless. And it's like I think that's a big fear, maybe rational to a certain extent, but and I understand that, but to me, I think that's like fanatical almost, you know, to think that it would ever get that extreme. I mean, thinking about how many guns there is, I think there may be more guns than people in the United States, and it's like
more bullets.
they're not gonna take every single gun that you have. It's impossible, and you'd probably be shooting and fighting your government before that even happens, and that's an issue. Yeah, that's an issue already within itself.
I feel like it kind of goes back to our previous podcast about conspiracies. It's a natural conspiracy that people feel that way, and it's funny because there's other countries that are actually facing that, you know, real world scenario, and they're not standing a chance. The people there aren't standing a chance against their military.
Yeah.
So what makes you? And I'm not saying. Right now we have one of the worst, in my opinion, one of the worst presidents in history. I see him as a tyrannical person, but I still don't see him as someone that, because there's always going to be people also in power that are going to make sure that things don't go crazy. You know, I like to believe that. Maybe I'm just being naive or whatever, but yeah, I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, I don't know.
And it's like it's just another excuse, you know. I don't know if I want to say sympathize. I understand the argument like that, like that's a real fear, but I just don't see it happening.
Another excuse. What are you gonna say about the black market?
I thought you were gonna say like that if the government was to take or imply more, put more restrictions onto getting the gun, access to get the gun, that the black market would increase and like they would sell more guns in the background
and like they already doing that.
That's actually true though. I could see that,
but like
it happens during prohibition era with alcohol.
Exactly. But like here's the thing: everyone that had alcohol, they would arrest.
Yeah,
they couldn't find everybody, obviously, but that's why that failed, because everybody wanted to drink. Yeah. Not everybody wants to shoot. Not everybody wants to carry a gun. We have friends that don't even want to carry a gun. Then that's not even like Carlos. He does. I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth. You don't even want to go to a shooting range, do you?
No.
So it's like I said, I enjoy going to a shooting range or whatever. But I'm not gonna.
I don't know how I feel about it. Cause I remember the gun is heavy, so I was pissed. And like just the power of it, I was like, okay, there you go. I don't want it. I'm not gonna do that.
But yeah, like if they do regulate and take all these steps, like everyone's always like, oh, well, the bad people are gonna get the guns. Okay, bad people get the guns anyway. Good people, like the people that you say they're supposed to, like good people, law-abiding people, they don't have guns to begin with. I'm not saying that every guy that has a gun's bad, but I feel like a good majority of people that are on this stance don't have a gun, and your argument might be, well, that's because they never shot a gun, they never had a gun, so they shouldn't even say anything. Okay, that's fair, but my point is that if we do these regulations and you see someone with a gun, you'll be more inclined and more justified to be like, or as an officer or whatever, to be like, can I see your paperwork for that? Your or did you pass the training or whatever?
Yeah.
That's how I feel. Because right now you see a person with a gun, and we have all these laws that protect them. We don't know if they're a good person or not, if they've been trained or not.
Yeah.
They could be the next shooter.
So we have a few quick facts about shootings around the world. In the UK in 1996, a shooter shot and killed 16 school children and a teacher in a primary school in Scotland, making it the deadliest shooting in British history. The UK later banned handguns and then initiated the buyback program. You said, where the government would buy back arms and then give them money. In contrast, here in the United States, after the Sandy Hook massacre, where 20 children were killed and 6 adults, not much has changed with gun laws, and instead, although some laws have been implemented in around every state, a lot of conspiracy theories have been brought up, saying that it was all a hoax and it wasn't real.
The shooting itself.
The shooting itself is not real. Yet you have parents, my kids. Also in Australia, a shooter killed 35 people in a popular tourist attraction in Tasmania. As a result, the country banned firearms, and also the government offered a buyback program. They've only had one mass shooting since. In New Zealand, as you mentioned earlier, at what is now known as the Christchurch massacre, after the shooting took place in New Zealand, the government also banned military-type weapons in as little as 6 days.
Wow.
That's that's government that's doing something.
It's we're going to take it.
That's
6 days. It took 6 days.
They can't even be bothered to come back from their break to at least pretend like they're on recess.
But whatever. Here in the U.S., Americans are 25 times more likely to die from a gun than in any other country in the world.
You know how scary a gun is, man?
It's a mini cannon.
And I think
in your hand.
I think that terror is also something that we should look into. I'm not saying you shouldn't be afraid of guns. You should. They're a terrifying thing, but that might also lead to the radical idea of banning all guns, which once again I don't think that's the solution. At least not now. I think we need to take baby steps.
Because you think about how hard it is to have confrontation now. You don't know who's packing steel, right? And it's before, if you were getting robbed, right? Say you were walking down a dark alley in New York somewhere, right? And for whatever reason, you could have been drunk and someone comes up to you with a knife. And it's you have a fighting chance. You get stabbed, you probably, it's going to hurt, but, if you're not stabbed, you see a knife, you're okay, you have a fighting chance. I'm not going to die. You feel like maybe you might, but I can flee, I can run. If I can outrun this guy, I'm good. If he throws a knife and might prick me, I'll be all right. Or I'll just fight him and I'll try to take the knife from him. But if someone pulls up to that dark alley while you're in there with a fucking gun, you don't have that same fighting chance. It's almost your whole life flashes before your eyes. You're there's no way you're getting out of this. And if the person is actually willing to pull that trigger, and if he has been starving and he thinks you have money or whatever it might be, you don't have a fighting chance, and you can't outrun a bullet. So it's terrifying,
It is. I've had a gun pulled on me twice. Both times weren't serious, but still, like you said, one was a shotgun, and I just thought, and I got really mad at the dude. So I'm not a violent person, so I didn't kick his ass, but I did think about it. Had he shot that, he said he didn't have anything in it. Later, they were shooting, and they didn't clear it, and it turns out it actually still had a bullet in there, a 12 gauge, and I was that. They shot a fucking milk carton and they just exploded. I'm that could have been me, because he ended it my torso. I'm that shit would have torn me to pieces. So I can see yes, it's terrifying, and then there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, that's too much power for an average Joe. That's too much power.
I definitely think, like I said, there should be trained. There should be some kind of training where where you failed this area, so you can't get shotgun, you can get a pistol. stuff like that.
I just think like if you really want a gun, just like how if you really want to drive, you tell your parents, I want to go get my driver's, so I want to get my driver's license. I feel like if you want a gun, you are gonna put that effort in to get that license and then get your
take the necessary steps.
So I want to leave you guys with a quote from the host of the Daily Show, Trevor Noah. I'm sure you guys heard him. So he says something in the wake of the El Paso shootings and stuff. It's an in between the scenes that he does. You guys should check it out. But basically, he says, "What's happening with the people of the country? Genuinely, I see it over and over again, where people say, 'But the Constitution.' And I'm like, yeah, but the Constitution is supposed to protect the people. If the Constitution is not protecting the people, then what is the point?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see you guys next.